Morning, friends. Now we are discussing techniques for aggregate planning. In the earlier class, we were discussing advantages of the aggregate planning. It helps the organization so that the production facilities, whatever available within the factory premises, will be dealt very effectively with the help of aggregate planning. So this process also helps to develop the effective long-term planning so that the distributors and suppliers will have good rapport with the company. So the company will also develop the suitable market research techniques to promote the product in the market with the help of the aggregate planning. So this aggregate planning also helps to optimize the inventory. So there will be unnecessary inventory cost for the company. So if the raw materials are procured in large quantity, so storing the raw materials and finished and finished products will incur additional inventory expenses for the company. So to minimize these inventory costs, so if we have the proper aggregate planning, so that the inventory unwanted inventory costs will be minimized. So this aggregate planning will be considered as an useful tool so that we can predict the demand for the product in the market. A business entity, any business entity, if you consider, so it can make the predictions or the forecast about the requirement of labor. So will be made possible if we have proper adequate planning so that the company can save considerably in terms of the labors, machines, and the time. So that is spent on hiring the new employees and giving training to them. So then this planning process will help to calculate the capacity. For instance, if you take used every day or in a week or in a month. So the production orders will not be constant throughout the year. So it is changing from season to season, and it also changing depending on the taste of the customers and their traditions and their income. So it is difficult for any business entity to keep up the same production plan for the entire year. So the proper aggregate planning process will consider this and it will take the suitable measures. So it helps the organization to identify the best options so that the demands can be met very easily. It assists in knowing what will be the inefficiencies in the organization. So accordingly, these inefficiencies can overcome. So it helps to determine the resources. For instance, if you take the amount of raw materials which is available in hand, so what is the availability of total machine hours, total number of workers available, and what is the products which are in production process, and what is the packaging material and tools required. So all these calculations will be done with the help of suitable aggregate planning. So it helps to optimize utilization of the space. So it also helps to offer optimized value to both the direct buyers from which we are getting the raw materials and the end customers to whom we are selling our finished products. So then techniques for aggregate planning. So graphic and charting method. So this method will do the prediction for the demand for each period. It also determine the costs on regular time, overtime and subcontracting for each period. So in any industry, so based on the demand for the product, so the company will make the employees to work on regular time So if the number of employees are in short, so we are making the existing employees to work overtime, and if still if we cannot meet the demand, so that to increase the production rate, we can go for subcontracting. So all these things leads to increase in the cost, production cost. Sometimes when there is a slack demand for the product, so that is when the demand is less, so undertime cost will also incur because we are keeping our employees idle. So subcontracting cost will include the wages to be paid to the subcontractors when the components or sub assemblies are made outside the organization. So it determines the labor cost, hiring and firing cost also. So these costs will consist of recruiting, screening the candidates and selecting the suitable candidate and the training costs required so that new employee whom we hired will be brought to full production skills. Then inventory holding costs. So whether it is with respect to the raw material or sub-finished goods or fully finished product, so inventory holding cost will be there, including and if there is any technology change and our finished products are not meeting the technology update, so then obsolescence cost will be incurred, and if there are any perishable goods are there, so deterioration cost will also coming into picture. Then this method will consider the company policy which may apply to the workers. So it also develop the alternative plans and examine the total costs. Mathematical techniques. So, heuristic methods and linear programming approaches. Heuristic methods will increase the speed of this aggregate planning process based on the experience and the knowledge of the team members who are in the aggregate planning. So based on the past experience and using the known industry best practices, they do the aggregate planning. Then linear programming approaches. So it is decision making technique so that we'll allocate the very scarce resources very optimally. So the production rates and human resource requirements will be evaluated as linear programming problems. So this linear programming problems will also be dealt under the subject operation research. So thank you friends.